will Africa look like in 2030? Africa is projected to see the largest increase in the size of its population in the coming 15 years. Right now, Africa has 1.2 billion inhabitants, and according to the UN, by the year 2030, the population will have doubled to over 1.8 billion. Africa alone will account to more than 20% of the world's population in 2030. Regarding urbanization, it is important to highlight that although today Africa is still the least urbanized region in the world, it is experiencing an extremely fast rate of urbanization. By 2030, it is expected that half of the African population will be living in cities.
Parce que chacun a son activité à faire au village là-bas, comme on ne trouve pas à faire là-bas, parce que ici maintenant il y a un peu de l'argent. Si on vient ici se siéger ici pour faire des activités, on trouve au moins de l'argent pour au moins nous satisfaire. C'est pourquoi.
However, for the moment, jobs are not expanding enough to meet the needs of the people, and urban governments find it impossible to expand the stock of housing, infrastructures, and services, leaving 72% of urban inhabitants living in slums. In fact, according to the African Economic Outlook, slum population will triple by 2030. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has a clear goal: to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Africa, though, faces the largest challenge to meet this goal. Currently, 36% of the African population lives in extreme poverty, with less than $1.25 a day. However, as African countries grow at around 4.4% per year, the extreme poverty rates are expected to decline only from 36% to 24% by 2030. Will African economies continue growing? According to the Global McKinsey Institute, Africa will become the second fastest growing region in the world, with an annual growth of 4.3% in the next 15 years. GDP per capita will continue to grow, reaching the level where emerging Asia is today. The rapid urban expansion will most likely contribute to rapid growth in consumption by households and business, and the UN estimates that foreign direct investment will quadruple by 2030. African governments will have to put in place policies to diversify their economies to reduce dependence on revenue from commodities. Africa has made significant strides in improving average achievements in education. This improvement has been even more dramatic for girls, with a four-fold increase in the primary completion rates during the last 2 decades. By 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals want to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. However, this goal seems too ambitious, as still some 50 million African children still do not have access to primary education. Regarding health, Africa bears the world's heaviest disease burden, driven by the pervasively high prevalence of diseases such as HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. These diseases will only be reduced by 30% in 2030. Climate change is a major and growing threat to global food security, especially in farming communities in Sub-Saharan Africa, as it will reduce crop yields and increase high volatility of food prices.
The climate change is impacting me as a farmer very hard, because I can't get green grass for my cattle, I can't get enough fruits to sell to the market, and we have a lot of problem with the drought. The climate is affecting people because they can't plant anything. So we just wait, sit down and wait for rain to come.
According to the UN, up to 60 million people will be living in extreme poverty by 2030 as a result of climate change. Climate change will increase the possibility of armed conflicts up to 54% by 2030. In addition to that, it will force people to move to less arid or drought-prone areas, creating dramatic human displacements by 2030. Water scarcity, floodings, starvation, and agricultural disasters will be one of the main causes of war and displacement within the next 15 years. Hey, welcome to Africa 2030, and here we are with Omar, which is working for MSF, and I wanted to pose you a question.
Well, I believe unfortunately there may be more MSF in Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, as you were saying before, for 2030. There are several reasons. It's true that I want to believe that recently you can feel that economic indicators and social indicators of the Sub-Saharan Africa are improving, yet there are certain countries that are stuck in certain so-called chronic crises, and those do not look like having a solution coming anytime soon. No? So because of the permanence of those chronic crises, as Central African Republic, South Sudan, Somalia, and so on and so forth, I believe that we are going to have to implement more operations as MSF or humanitarian actors are going to have to keep working. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I believe that new episodes of violence, call it Islamic-related violence, call it political violence, or call it simple criminality, are going to produce yet displacement, and they are going to keep prolonging the poverty that certain countries are experiencing. No? So in that sense, there's going to be a humanitarian response needed, and that's where MSF is going to have to keep on intervening. And then on the third hand, I would say that there are certain medic epidemics that are far from being solved or from being eradicated. No? I would talk about meningitis, measles, cholera. Those, a potential new Ebola, why not, or any other sort of infectious diseases. Those are not always easy to prevent, and even though they should be easy to respond to and to mitigate, they're not either. No, so. Mainly what you have is the big pharma companies that are not producing as much vaccines or drugs in general as they should in order to attack these epidemics. And when for this reason, and looking at how the global health response it is in terms of these medical epidemics, I believe that again MSF or organizations like MSF are going to have to be working and potentially increasing their operations in Africa. No? So, and then I would add a fourth reason, which is the natural growth of many of the humanitarian organizations. No? We keep growing, and then our capacity is allowing us to see more needs where we wouldn't see them in the past. So that is a paradox, no? Because whereas we should, as we were talking before, let maybe states manage by themselves their own problems, you have on the other hand big organizations as MSF trying to monitor closer and trying to identify more needs, and therefore paradoxically, rather than letting some governments develop by themselves, they may be condemning this local development with a good willingness, no? But it's a collateral damage that the humanitarian action can have. So that would be another fourth reason why I believe that MSF is going to be bigger, or could potentially be bigger in 2030.
So not only climate change, but also violent extremism will continue to fuel conflicts with important transnational dimensions.
Da muka zo mu kangan nan an ba mu waje mai kyau, an ba mu abinci, an ba mu da ta fito ta daɗin ta fito wa zai shiga me yasa mutane suke a lokacin ba a san ko za ta fara taɓanna haka ba shi yasa
threaten Nigeria's neighbours, launching raids into their territory. The coalition's now posts spoken around civilians and kidnappings led by Chad,
International involvement by UN peacekeeping operations will be sustained, and an increasing role will be played by the African Union forces under the umbrella of the new African peace and security architecture.
The peacekeeping missions, there's very few of them that have been successful, no? Within the last years. You have missions that are becoming eternal, like the ones in Darfur, in Congo, potentially in Central African Republic, etc., etc. You know, I believe that nowadays those are ill-perceived because more and more there is a political agenda behind those interventions, whereas in theory there should be a pure humanitarian and stabilization role, but more and more you have an intention from the United Nations or from these specific missions to address holistically humanitarian, political and development objectives. No?
Here, Veronica Ocham is washing clothes for her family. She fled fighting and helicopter attacks to reach the UN facility.
Regarding politics, young Africans are struggling with unemployment and the absence of civil liberties. Political instability, bad governance, and failed neoliberal social and economic policies have exacerbated long-standing societal problems. Protests will rise as a response to the political marginalization